Welcome to another episode of Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes, and today we have another 101 course where we talk about stuff like this. Or what about stuff like that? What the heck? Why not just all of this stuff? Today's a very important course because if you know this like the back of your hands, then you can literally own Arena, Galactic War, and many other aspects in the game. So that is why we're having a negative status effect 101 course. They're also known as detrimental effects, also known as debuffs for a bit of a shorter term. And we're going to talk about what these things do, what kind of debuffs are out there, and what characters can use those debuffs. So very important today, so stick around and we'll get right into it. So what are negative status effects? Well, they're pretty much an inverse of what positive status effects are. They're meant to pretty much go on the enemy team. That's kind of the goal. You don't want them on your side. They're meant to go on the other team so you can slow down their pace of the game, prevent them from attacking, prevent them from using important abilities, and reducing the amount of damage, and many other things, as we will soon find out. So that's why they're very important, because they change up how the game works, and it makes the battles a little bit less predictable, because you don't know if that ability block will get on you. You don't know if you'll get offense down on you. It's a lot of luck, sometimes a lot of strategy, and we're going to talk about just that by talking about the first negative status effect that I want to get to. So we're going to start up with some of the older ones and work our way to the newer ones. And the first thing we're going to talk about is ability block. Pretty much your bread and butter when it comes to negative status effects. And what this does is that it prevents characters from using their special abilities, and they're only able to use their basic ability, which could be a good or bad thing depending on what's going on. My biggest tip for this one is to make sure you count down the opponent's abilities. If you know they have a 3-turn cooldown and they just finished their cooldown, you want to slam that ability block on. Slam it! I'm talking about slamming it really hard on them so they can't taunt, they can't use their own ability block, they can't stun everyone. Very, very important. So that's my biggest tip for you. And the characters that have this type of ability are the following. We got Pago the Lesser, we got Old Ben. There are also other options out there. You have Boba Fett, you have IG-88, and you have TIE Fighter Pilot, who on the targeted enemy, he can apply ability block. Just a small list. There's a lot of other ones out there, but those are some of the popular guys that can do that. But let's go ahead and talk about our next negative status effect, shall we? This next negative status effect has become more popular ever since tanks became a really big thing in the game, and that is buff immunity. What buff immunity does is pretty much prevent anyone from getting any sort of buffs. So you can't taunt, you can't gain offense up, no speed down, no say man, no speed down, and a lot of other of those green things, which we'll talk about later in another video. Mainly my biggest tip is to use this against pretty much anyone, but most especially tanks, because when a tank taunts, it really slows down your pace. It can let someone else heal themselves up, and you could be starting all over again in the battle if a tank works just at the right time. But if you apply buff immunity, they can't taunt, they can't gain tenacity up, they can't gain evasion, and many other things. So that is my biggest tip. Make sure you don't get Royal Guard taunting, Shore Trooper, Sun Fac. If they can't taunt because of buff immunity, they are a pretty worthless member in the team. But here are some examples of characters that can apply buff immunity. We got Anakin Skywalker. He can apply buff immunity to a single character. We also have TIE Fighter Pilot. We also have the Night Sister Initiate, but my personal favorite, the B2 Super Battle Droid. He is amazing. He can apply buff immunity to everyone on the field, and that is very deadly. But speaking of deadly, we have some more stuff to talk about, so let's go on to the next guy. Next up, we have damage over time, or DOT, or DOT for short. And pretty much what this does, when you have a single I'm gonna call it a dot, let's call it a dot, I like that, dot dot dot. When you have a DOT on your damage over time, pretty much you lose 5% of your max health every single turn it is on you. So let's do a little bit of math, shall we? So here's an example. Let's say your character has 10,000 health, and 5% of 10,000 is 500 damage. So for every damage over time, you lose 500 health. So obviously, the more health a character has, the more damage over time gets applied to them. So this is actually pretty deadly under Vader Zeta lead, because they never expire until he leaves the battle. And this is also a great opportunity to try to knock out those characters who are hiding behind tanks. If they have like 1% health left, that damage over time will most likely knock them out. So it's really great for finishing off the job you started off with. So some examples of characters that can apply these types of debuffs are Darth Vader, Boba Fett, HK-47. Bistan can apply a ton of of damage over time, and we also have characters like Dengar. So all great, but we have some more stuff to talk about. So let's keep rolling the ball here. Next up, we have defense down. And what defense down is, it drives your defense down about 50%. And less armor means you're taking a bit more damage than usual, because armor's purpose is to reduce the amount of damage that you are receiving. And if you can't reduce as much damage, you're gonna knock out a lot faster. And if you want to know what characters can apply defense down, well, I have a couple that you might want to know. Firstly, we have IG-88. He can apply it on his mass dealing attack. We also have Wedge, who can apply it on his basic, so this could be quite useful for him. We also have characters like Jawa Scavenger, not as special, but we also have characters like Ethkoth, again, not really all that special. And Cassian Andor, not a popular character in the game, but he can apply a variety of debuffs, and defense down is one of them. But let's keep trudging along. We got some more stuff, so let's get going. Now we get to the debuff that's a politician's worst nightmare, and that is expose. But don't worry, we're not exposing your dirty laundry, we're just exposing 20% of your maximum health. So when you have that nice little magnifying glass above your head, what that means is that the next time you get hit, you will lose 20% of your max health. So the more health you have, the more damage you will take, and it's very important to use this against characters like Fives, Sun Fac, General Kenobi, all those big, heavy, health-based characters. And here are a few examples if you want to rock this debuff on your team. Not too many have this, but you do have Mace Windu. We got Poe. Poe's probably the most popular one that does this. A lot of resistance characters that use this, and there's also other characters like Zam Wessel. Oh yeah, and I forgot to mention Cassian Andor. If you remember, he can apply a ton of exposes, especially when he's under a Jyn Ursa lead. So if you see him, definitely keep a mind on that, because you could have like 5 exposes on you, which is a pretty bad situation to be in. Next up, we have health down, a much more interesting mechanic. We don't see it be used all this often, but here is what it does. So there's not much information on this debuff. It's more of a thing you have to kind of observe, but what it does is that it reduces your maximum health by 20%. And let's get a little bit of math going so we can kind of understand this in a bigger picture. To start, let's say you have a character with 10,000 health. Well, 10,000 times 20% is 2,000. 10,000 minus 2,000 means you're at 8,000 maximum health. But let's say someone follows up and gives a 4,000 damage dealing attack. Well, now you're left at 4,000 out of your 8,000 maximum health, which puts you at a percentage of 50% health left. But let's say that effect eventually expires. Well, then what happens? What happens is that the percentage remains. So as you know, we left off with 50% health. Well, when the effect expires, you will still have 50% health left. So you will go back to 10,000 health, but now you will have 5,000 health. So it's a very odd mechanic, not the most popular, but that's how it works. And there's really only 2 big characters that we really see use this, and that is General Grievous and the First Order TIE Fighter pilot. You know, I used to remember a mechanic that was very, very important in a galaxy far, far away, and that was healing immunity. Definitely still important to this day, and don't get me wrong, but it was much more important way back when healing was the king and queen of the game. And just like how the word says, healing immunity prevents a character from being healed, either healed from another character like Luminara or a self-heal like Palpatine. They will not regain health, and this can work to your advantage sometimes. The AI isn't the smartest thing in the world, and when there's healing immunity, they might still try to heal. So Palpatine, if he has healing immunity, he'll try to heal himself. Nothing's gonna happen. Luminara's gonna try to heal. Nothing's gonna happen. So this is a very important mechanic if you want to prevent those characters, because once Palpatine goes to full health and you have a tank taunting, it's not a fun battle and you're pretty much starting from scratch. And here are some examples of characters that can apply healing immunity. You got Darth Sidious. He was the king of healing immunity way back when, that kind of disappeared all of a sudden. You also have IG-88, and you also have General Grievous, and last but certainly not least, we have Kylo Ren. Wait, I take that back. He certainly is the least. So yeah, he's pretty bad. But you can forget about him. But yeah, there are more characters out there, but those are the bigger ones that I thought I'd mention in the game. Another very powerful old mechanic that is still very relevant today is offense down. You know those big damage dealing characters? Well, what if we just knock down their damage by 50%. Well, that's a thing in this game. If you apply offense down on characters like Ray or Baston, Wedge, Biggs, they just turn into pretty much wet noodle throwing babies. And it's a very important thing. So let's say you do 8,000 damage before. Well, after offense down, that attack is now 4,000. Of course, before mods, abilities, critical damages are kind of in the equation. So a very powerful thing, and characters that can apply offense down are the following. You got Old Ben, and then you got Grand Moff Tarkin, and you also have HK-47, a pretty popular one nowadays still. We also have Jawa Scavenger, K2SO, he can counterattack and apply offense down. Poe can apply offense down on his primary attack. And characters like Sun Fac can apply offense down when they're pointing at a character and then taunting. He can apply offense down. But the next one, we've all had those days. We're going to be talking about speed down. You ever have those days where you had about 20 plus Big Macs and then you had a pizza to go with that afterwards and you feel pretty sluggish? Well, that's pretty much what speed down does. It reduces your speed by 25%, and this is a very important mechanic against very fast characters as well as very slow ones, to be frankly. Frank. So for all you guys who love your numbers, if you had 100 speed, you are now down to 75 because 25 is 25% of 100. But in more realistic terms, after mods, if you have 200 speed and you take away 25% of your speed, you're now at 150. So a very deadly thing that can really slow down the game for you if you depend on very fast characters like Ray, TIE Fighter Pilot, Stormtrooper Han. Very, very important. So there are a lot of characters that can apply speed down in this game. You have Captain Phasma, who can apply speed down to pretty much everyone. You also have Baze Malbus. He can go ahead and taunt and apply speed down with his basic. You also have characters like Darth Vader, who can use the Force Crush and give you speed down. By far, the one that really comes to mind is Fives. He'll just put speed down on everyone and keep counter attacking. The guy just won't leave you alone. And then there are also a lot of other characters such as Dengar, HK-47, Royal Guard, and Grand Moff Tarkin, and of course the list just goes on and on and on. But we have more stuff to talk about, so let's get on to the next topic. Now, for you guys who've been playing the game for a long time, don't you just miss those days where everything was about stun? Oh yeah, stun, Count Dooku, Daka, all those stuns, and it's still going on today with Emperor Palpatine. And what stun does is it makes you skip your next turn. It's like ability block, but on steroids. You can't do anything for one turn. You just stand there frozen and you get punched in the face while you're stunned. And it's a very powerful mechanic, and you got to be very careful to stay away from those. Probably the second or third most deadly debuff in the game. And characters that can apply stun are characters like Count Dooku, Daka, oh yeah, Emperor Palpatine. He can stun pretty much everyone on the field. Ayla Secura can counter and apply stun. You got Commander Cody. We got Dengar. Yep, we even have Yoda. He can apply stun as well. Han Solo can apply stun right at the very beginning. We also have Jyn Erso and Royal Guard, and of course there are a couple others, but those are by far the most popular, and it's a very popular, powerful mechanic among a lot of characters, as you might be seeing. This next debuff is a bit less popular among all the other characters in the game, and it's called Thermal Detonator. It's kind of like damage over time, but with a couple of caveats. First off, Thermal Detonators have a cooldown unlike damage over time, but sometimes they can be triggered immediately by characters like Zam Wesell. Another thing is, unlike damage over time, Thermal Detonators can apply usually more damage, and they have a damage variant depending on the character who's throwing the Thermal Detonators. Sometimes they can apply a lot of damage, sometimes not as much. You can also get critical damage out of this, unlike damage over time. But for the most part, the Thermal Detonators are kind of like damage over time because they're based off of the max health of a character. Examples of characters that can use Thermal Detonators are Greedo, Jawa Scavenger, Jawa Engineer, Nute Gunray, Zam Wesell, as well as the Mob Enforcer. Yeah, not many people use her. Ugh. Another interesting fact, Thermal Detonators can actually be pretty deadly against the tank. Jawa Engineer is one of the great characters for the raid because he'll just go ahead, pile up those Thermal Detonators, and then boom! It's all done. That's how you do it. But let's keep going on, and we have some more stuff to talk about. We have about 5 more topics to get to here. These next 5 debuffs are a bit newer. We've seen them in the past, I don't know, maybe at least 6-7 months or so. They haven't been here at the beginning of the game, and they've been coming out over time. And the first one I want to talk about is Critical Chance Down. Not the most popular or important, and not the most deadly, but what Critical Chance Down does is that it reduces your chance of getting a critical damage attack by 25%. So this is deadly badly against characters like Lando, droids, characters that really depend on critical damage. If they're not getting those attacks out, they're not doing as much damage as they should be doing. So if you can lower that opportunity, all the better for your team. And characters that can apply this are characters like Shore Trooper and Sunfac. Sunfac is going to counterattack a lot and apply that debuff, so definitely be careful. All right, Tenacity Down. This is one of the more confusing debuffs in the game that not many people really understand how it works, and it also got a change in wording because when it first came out, it said you never can resist a debuff when this is applied, and they had to change the wording because, let me just give you the explanation real quick. This is actually an official answer that came straight from the developers. Essentially, every single character, no matter how low your tenacity is, I don't care if it's -5 bajillion, you still have a 15% chance to resist that ability. And so they had to change the wording, and Tenacity Down means it just reduces the likelihood of resisting a negative status effect. So just because a character has Tenacity Down applied on them, that does not mean that they will always have a negative status effect applied to them, but this is still helpful. It's great for the raids when you want to try to reduce the speed of someone, when you want to try to remove turn meter. So it is a great mechanic, but just keep in mind it does not always get applied when you have Tenacity Down, and it's not a bug. It's working as intended, as the developers have mentioned. And there aren't really too many characters that can apply Tenacity Down, but Dengar and TIE Fighter Pilot are by far the most popular guys who can do this, and I made reviews on both of those characters, and we talk about who is the better choice for the raid, so check that out if you want the official answer on that. Just like the days where everything was about stunned, we also had those days where everything was about evasion. Oh yeah, the good old days. But the developers did release a minor band-aid to address this, and we call it Evasion Down. This tried to help reduce leaders like Old Ben and Dooku from being used, and it just helps make the game a little less annoying. And pretty much what it does is that it reduces your chance to evade by 25%. So a lot of the times it counteracted those Count Dooku and Old Ben leads. And it's still something that you still love to have just to ensure you can just smack that character in the face. And there are a couple of characters who can apply this, such as Zam Wessel. We also have characters like Geonosian Spy. We don't see him all that much. And my personal favorite, the B2 Super Battle Droid. This next debuff is called Daze, and it is the freshest debuff out on the streets right now. What Daze does is that it prevents characters from counterattacking, prevents them from assisting, and it also prevents a character from gaining bonus turn meter. So it's kind of like the last debuff we'll talk about in a moment here, and it's great against characters like Fives, Sunfac, Ayla Sakura. Totally shuts down I'm a gun die leads. It's a very awesome debuff, and so far the only two characters that we have that can do this are Darth Maul and K2SO, but of course this could change one day. Another thing I'd like to mention is that Darth Maul's Daze is a bit wonky and a bit bugged for sure. When he initially applies Daze, characters like Biggs or Fives, they can attack right away, and it doesn't apply the effect immediately. You have to wait till after that initial counterattack or that initial turn meter gain for it to finally work, but I hope they fix this one day. This is your personal shout out. Fix that. Oh man, and we got this last debuff here, one of the craziest ones out there that only one person has, and that is called Shock, and I have exclusive footage on how they thought of this idea.
So like, dude,
Yeah.
so you know we're having like this problem where everyone seems to be getting a lot of turn meter from Old Ben's lead?
Sure.
And there are like a lot of buffs going around, like, you know, tanks taunting all the time.
Sure.
And like, you know, all these healers just always healing after a tank has taunted.
Tell me something I don't know about.
Well, like, how are we gonna solve this problem, man? Dude, why don't you just like take 3 debuffs, put them in one, give it to one character, and use it on a basic attack? Why didn't I think of that, dude?
And that, my friends, is how Shock was born. Pretty much Shock is one of those debuffs that is a very powerful one. It pretty much allows you to apply buff immunity, it allows you to apply healing immunity, and prevents you from gaining bonus turn meter from someone like an Old Ben lead, Stormtrooper Han, Jawa Engineer, a lot of other leaders who provide turn meter like Captain Rex, Emperor Palpatine, as well as HK-47. You can quickly shut down those bonus turn meter based teams, and at the same time, Shock kind of sets you up to pretty much almost a guaranteed chance to stun someone when Emperor Palpatine uses his mass dealing attack. And there are so many characters that can use Shock right now. We have Emperor Palpatine, Emperor Palpatine, we have Papa Palpatine, and we got Palpatine. So yeah, not many characters have that debuff, and it is very powerful. Emperor Palpatine can apply that with his basic, and he is a madman when he's using that. And there you have it. Those are all of the negative status effects we have in this game so far. Of course, the list is always it's going to continue to grow as the game gets more and more developed. Shock and Daze are the newest mechanics in the game when it comes to negative status effects, and I can only imagine that the list can get even bigger, and we will talk about those if they ever do come out in the future. So I hope this video helped you out today, and if you want to learn about another topic in this type of format, let me know down in the comments below, and we will talk about it in depth in a 101 guide so you can continue to master the game. But as always, please, 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 if you enjoyed the video, leave me a like, comment down below, and as always, subscribe for more Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes content, and we will talk again soon. Peace out.